We portray 25 creation stories from all over the world, so they're shown on an equal level. And when a child sees the creation story of the Old Testament alongside the Eskimo creation story, the Inuit creation story, the Maori creation story, Hawaiian, Zulu, for instance, all on an equal level, this really changes things for them right away. And in fact, the big myth doesn't really need a lot of explanation from teachers. Kids go on and they see this world map and they see all the little regions that are displayed, and they click on it and they get a story. And there's no judgment, there's no hierarchy, and so they're allowed to just experience for themselves. And it creates expertise in the children that are usually marginalized. So if a child comes from Africa, let's say they come from the Southern African region, and they're familiar with their own, for instance, Zulu creation tale, because we focus on group work in the big myth, that one child, usually marginalized because he might not know these other religious stories from their own childhood, become experts. And it really strengthens their desire to learn in general. We originally intended it for European students between the age of 12 and 14. And it picked up and broadened from there. We started getting a lot of international students, a lot of students who would get online from countries like Africa, continents such as Africa, South America, that we would never expect, and we certainly didn't market for. And we got a lot of different ages that we weren't expecting. We got kindergartens that would set up a beamer in the classroom, and they would use it as story hour. They had little speakers and they had a projection screen, and they would set the little kids in a circle, and they would just let them experience the stories, and kids as young as 5, 6, 7. And then we also had students who were as old as 25, 26 using it as English learning. China, we had a whole school in China that was using it, teenagers using it as just pure English language learning, which is very interesting considering how little actually does get there. And then we also found that blind and hard of hearing students were using it because it is a multimedia experience. You don't need, for instance, if you're seeing impaired, you are able to experience the tales as audio versions and vice versa. So we are going to be adding that as well. We're going to be adding audio only. So we would create the written material, and then they would pass the actual stories on to the writers. The writers would condense it into a lyrical format, and then that would go to the animators. And the actual flash production people and software, the programmers as well. And then the audio would be read. We had audio in Dutch and in English. So we had to get some professionals in to do the readings. And then we would sync up the audio with the animation. All of this was done in Flash. And we had some audio production software as well. And that would be boiled down into a SWF file. And the SWF file would then be coupled with the HTML pages of the background material. Then we also had educational specialists that would write the actual curriculum. So the teacher's guides, that's a big section in the website, had to be written. This was all being done simultaneously. Each story has curriculum behind it as well. So those had to be written as well by the IAIE, took that on. Then we had a list of the other gods in the pantheon for every culture. So that also had to be researched. So all of these things were running at the same time. We had about 5 or 6 students doing the research. We had writers, we had translators, we had audio technical staff, animation staff, people who put the whole thing together, and then we had people who would do outreach to the schools and teacher training. We received about €120,000 altogether, and unfortunately this was about half of what we needed to produce it professionally. But with that amount of money we were able to get it off the ground, and it requires, to keep it in the air, it requires an annual budget of about $15,000. We have some staff costs and some technical costs, software, hosting, etc. But that is enough to keep it going, and we're able to generate a small amount of income from the sale of these CDs to keep it going at that rate. What teachers find what's out there right now is either too educational and not interesting enough and loses the kids' interest, basically taking book format material, text and images, and reproducing it online in a linear format, which is not what the internet is designed to do. Or it's too fun and entertaining and too little educational content. I could name a few, but I won't. Where the focus is on getting the kids excited about something, but the actual learning that takes place is glossed over. So between these two extremes, there has to be a middle way. And people need to focus on this middle way. And teachers are desperate for this kind of material because they ignore either extreme. They ignore the boring stuff because the kids aren't interested. They don't need the internet for that. And they ignore frankly, the too entertaining, fun stuff because there's very little value to it, and you lose the kids. They sort of become hyperactive with too much of that in their classroom. So they're very desperate for this kind of middle path learning. And also, they're desperate for material that doesn't present absolutely everything for them, that gives the kids room to do research projects and to submit their own versions of stories, for instance, or encourage the children to write in or produce things of their own. One of the great successes that we've had that was unexpected was how widely used the Create Your Own Stories section was, and the discussion forums. I have about 65 pages of just children's creation stories that they've invented after reading these other stories and become inspired. Of course, we had to delete some of the explicit ones, but we were just enchanted by what they came up with. Very creative, very fun, original, not Disney-inspired, what you might expect, very creative, very much from their heart, and very reflective of their own backgrounds as well. So the discussion forums, we had also adults come in, young kids as little as 8 or 9, people who were doing dissertations who would write their own answers to certain questions. And this is the beauty of the internet, is this creation of community and creation of groups across cultural lines, across national lines, language barriers as well. Because of the audio-visual nature of it, we were able to cross these barriers as well.